famous around the world for one of the most rowdy, partying, crazy, like downtown cities in the world. And we were there, and we were gathering the people together, the musicians and the worshipers in the city together. And we released 24 hours of continuous vertical, just abandoned worship to God. Right in the middle of downtown, we just totally took over this cafe. And we actually had so many worshipers and so many musicians show up that we had 3 levels. The cafe had 3 levels. We had bands on all 3 levels of the cafe, and worshipers on all 3 levels, going at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was just insane. And it was just this massive sound coming from it. So anyway, it started to get late, about 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and everyone's just stumbling around, just totally wasted, out of their mind, and trying to find out how to get home or do whatever. So anyway, we had this whole group of guys that just stumbled off the street because they heard the music, and they just came into the cafe. And they walked in, and literally, they got about 3 steps through the doorway, and all 3 of them hit the ground. I mean, these guys are like, they're drunk out of their mind, right? 3 steps into this place of worship. They hit the ground, and they start saying, God, I must know you. And supernaturally, the Lord sobers them up. They give their life to Jesus. They get plugged into a local church. I mean, it was just the most amazing thing. I'm sitting here watching this whole thing happen. I start watching them come over to the door, and I'm like, this is going to be interesting. And they get in there, and the presence of God, the resting place, the throne of God is established, where as they entered into this place, this atmosphere of the presence of God, they were immediately transformed. They caught it. There's a picture in the Old Testament about this in 1 Samuel 10. It talks about Saul. You remember the story? Saul was hanging out, and Samuel said, you're going to meet a company of prophets. They're going to come, and they're going to be worshiping. They're going to be prophesying. They're going to be playing their harps. They're going to be singing the new song, and they're going to come. And as you come into their midst, you're going to begin to prophesy. You're going to begin to prophesy. And then it says this. It says, and you will be changed into a different person. So what happened? Saul comes into the company of these singing, psalmists, worshiping minstrels. And all of a sudden, the spirit of prophecy comes on him. He begins to prophesy, and he is absolutely transformed into a different person. And everybody looks at him and they say, who is this man? The son of Kish. Is this Saul? Is he prophesying? And there was this transformation that took place in the place of his presence. And then it says, and once you come into this experience, do whatever you want to have in your heart to do, for God is with you. Yeah. And what this gives us a picture of, guys, is when we begin to worship. And I'm telling you, I know this whole movement of seeker-sensitivism all over the world, all over the U.S. I mean, it's really not happening around the world. It's only happening in the West. But our whole mentality of let's shorten our services and make them 45 minutes and fit into the relevance of culture. And what's happening is people really aren't experiencing the true gospel. They're not needing the presence of God. It's just a form.
That's right.
And so I think that this whole thing of seeker, the seeker-friendly thing, I say, if we create an atmosphere where the Holy Spirit is residing in our midst, where He's welcome to come and be who He is, in our midst. Did you know one of his job descriptions is to seek and save those that are lost? Yeah. So what we're seeing happen is as the Holy Spirit comes, non-believers, people with issues walk through the door. The presence of God is drawing them in. It's the real seeker-sensitive movement that God's doing on the earth. And what we're beginning to see is a transformation take place. And it's not happening because our programs are so good, but it's happening because we're just letting God be who He wants to be. We're giving Him control. I mean, so many times, we're like, God, we want you to come, we want you to come, and what we don't realize is that God is the all-consuming fire. When He comes, He doesn't come to fit in to our paradigm or our idea of what we think He should do. He comes to take over.
Yeah. Right.
He comes to absolutely take over. Everything. And I've been studying a lot about the first and second great awakenings, that happened in America. And we're doing all this stuff right now on the university campuses, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. In case you didn't know, these were all birthed out of revival. All of those universities actually were the base of revival, and John Wesley and all these, crazy radical dudes, that pioneered those awakenings. They all preached out of these centers, and over time, humanism and unbelief entered in, and now the whole thing has been thwarted. But we're believing for the redemption and the restoration of the original calling of God in those places. And I've been studying about how the presence of God in some of those meetings were so thick, they didn't even have to give altar calls. They didn't have to twist people's arms or do whatever. But God's presence was so thick, people were literally screaming, running to the front of the altars, and they were repenting, and they were saying, God, we got to have you. It was like this holy fear of the Lord that was in their midst, and it drew in a lot. And unlike anybody in all of history, this is a cool fact. John Wesley and Charles Finney. Okay, anybody know who Charles Finney is? Yeah. Look at a picture on the line of this dude. He is scary. His eyes are so intense. But anyway, they said Charles, a lot of people didn't agree with his message because he was just a madman, and he would just go after God, and he was abrasive and he was intense. But they say that over 95% of Charles Finney's converts continue to be believers and serve the Lord their whole life. That's the highest of any, obviously not more than Jesus, but that's the highest of anybody that's been recorded in modern history. 95%. Why? Because his meeting, all he did was he said, fire of God, come. Fire of God, come. We welcome your presence. And they began to sing and they began to worship. And a lot of people don't know this, but the first and second great awakenings, the Welsh revival, Azusa Street, all of this stuff, do you know what it was marked by? Spontaneous song. There's always a new sound that's associated with the new move of God. Remember Acts 2? They're up. What brought the Holy Spirit? And they were worshiping. They were singing. And it said when the people heard this sound, the lost came. And there's a sound that God's releasing. So anyway, in a lot of these spots like Yale University, you go in these rooms that have, the history of the revival, and there'll be entire stacks of spontaneous songbooks that were recorded during the meetings. Of songs that just came forth and they were birthed in a place of His presence where people truly entered into this throne room type encounter with God. And as they entered into this throne room encounter, the presence of the Lord came and rested in their midst. And so I really believe, just to wrap it up today, I really believe that we're coming into a season where God's releasing a new sound in our midst. And we have an invitation as the people of God to host Him like we've never hosted Him before. And I want to encourage you, Heidi Baker gave me this word out of Song of Songs 2 earlier this year. And it talks about, it says, this is the season of singing. The season of singing is upon us. And I really believe, guys, that we're entering into a season where your entire Sunday morning services may be taken up with nothing but spontaneous worship to Him.
Yay.
Are you ready for that?
Yay.
Are you going to be okay with that?
Yeah.
And it's not because we want to be cool and enter into this worship fad. It's because God is worthy. And the closer that He comes to earth, the more we're beginning to engage in the activities of heaven. Like this worship movement around the earth, it talks about in Amos 9, in Acts 15. And it says that this worship movement, I'll just finish with this. Amos 9, go there with me real quick. Amos 9:11, this is the prophetic picture of the restoration of worship, night-and-day worship that we're seeing around the world. Real quick, I don't have time to teach on it, but David instituted 33 years of non-stop worship and prayer. It was called the Tabernacle of David. And he assembled 4,000 musicians that he paid to do nothing.